Hi, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you who've joined us for the special conversation. International Women's Day is an important moment, an exciting moment in the Accenture calendar, not least because we get the opportunity to celebrate our women, our own women, indeed our partnerships around the world, the accomplishments of the women we work with, and most especially to celebrate the remarkable role models whom we're privileged to know. And indeed today, I'm delighted to be in the company of some truly astounding and wise women who will be sharing their inspiring stories with us this evening. But first, I overheard a comment yesterday, albeit in a different context, but it spoke about how, had we been more advanced or even on track with the SDGs, the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, one of which is, of course, gender equality, had we even been on track, we would have been in a much, much better place to cope with the impact that the pandemic has had on all of us. And it's sobering to think that it's taken something as severe as COVID-19 to expose the deep systemic challenges still ingrained in our economies, in our homes, in our workplaces. But the good news is, and if indeed we can look for some good, is that it's shone a spotlight on things unspoken. And so occasions such as this, conversations such as this are all the more vital right now, giving us that chance to reflect, to consider how we can build back better with the support of all of us who are part of this conversation. And in a brand new report, co-authored with W20, launched just yesterday, called If Not Now, When?, we look closely at the impact that COVID-19 has had particularly on women. And we offer a roadmap towards achieving a more gender equitable recovery. And we encourage you to take a look at this when you have the chance. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank our partners, HBR Arabia, and the women who are joining us this evening to share their journeys. And so, without further ado, and to kick us off, we're starting with a fireside chat between Accenture's Global Inclusion and Diversity Lead, Amanda Leacy, and our own Regional Head of Marketing and Communications, Ebru Tuygun. Over to you, Ebru.
Thank you, Loren. Hi, Amanda. It is lovely to have you joining us for this fireside chat today. First of all, happy International Women's Day and week for our participants joining today. So, Amanda, I would like to start with your career journey. Please tell us about your path and how did you grow in your career? Is there any woman or man leader that supported you in this journey?
Hi, and thanks to everybody for joining and spending the time. And thank you, Ebru, for the question. I've been with Accenture for 23 years, so I'm really showing my age now. And it really has been a wonderful journey. I've had the opportunity to travel to 17 different countries around the world. And that travel and that global nature of the company and the experience I've had has really been the thing that really kick-started my career journey. So I'm afraid I'm going to take you all the way back to 2002 when I was a manager in the London delivery centre, and I was asked to go out to China, Dalian, where we were setting up a new business there. And so out I trotted to China and quickly learnt how much I didn't know and had to really be pushed out of my comfort zone as we set up that new business there. And it was like being in a startup inside a big country. It was a really wonderful experience. And so a few months later in 2003, March 2003, in fact, I was asked to go out to India, Bangalore. And I don't know if you can believe it, Ebru, but at that time we had 0 employees in Bangalore. And today we have over 100,000. So it was, again, a really exciting, energetic time setting up the practice there. And I was meant to stay for six weeks, but I stayed for 9 months and then I went back and forth. And what happened then over the next 10 years was I became the HR director for what was our delivery center network. And if you wind the clock forward to the end of those 10 years, we had 110,000 people across 40 locations. And so that really catapulted my career. It really pushed me out of my comfort zone too. And it really led me to where I am today, because understanding how things actually happen in a large company and get done on the ground, and building that network of colleagues around the world positioned me really well. I met my husband in India. He's actually Jamaican heritage, and we called our firstborn daughter India. So we have a lot to thank that wonderful country for. You asked me about people who helped me along the way, and I think I would run out of time if I had to mention all of the people who'd helped me along the way. And it was certainly a real mix of men and women. But my key sponsors were actually male up until recently, and now I would say my key sponsors are female. But I think in any case, both men and women can play really key roles in helping all of us by giving us, really frank coaching and feedback in the moment, listening to our aspirations, and helping to open doors for us. Sorry, Ebru, you're on mute. This is the problem with Teams.
I mean, that's an amazing, inspiring journey. What else do you recommend men doing in this equation to accelerate equality? What are your recommendations?
So I think, for us at Accenture, sitting here today, we have 230,000 women around the world, and women represent over 45%. That has really been an acceleration in the last 5 years. Where before we had sort of plateaued around 35% women and about 110,000 women. And what's happened in the last 5 years, and it was really under Pierre Nanterne's leadership as the CEO, is setting gender diversity and other elements of diversity as a priority for his business strategy. Goals were being cascaded through the organization. We're very transparent about those goals. We're transparent about our progress. And then making sure that those goals are part of our performance discussions and really part of what we believe is the success of our business, because we know that diversity increases innovation. We know it changes culture, and that's hugely important for us.
Brilliant. I mean, for our young women leaders, what are your recommendations for them to grow their journey? So
I was thinking about this over the weekend, because I think if you'd have asked me this time last year, I would have talked about the importance of growth mindset, the importance of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, grabbing opportunities with both hands, being fully authentic. And all of that is still absolutely true and valid. But the last year, with the health crisis, with the economic crisis, it's made me much more reflective about the difficult times and where do we get our resilience from. And so what's been more important to me at this point has been things like self-care, self-compassion, and self-reflection. And if I think about the ups and downs of my journey, and I know we're going to come on to some of the downs as well as the ups, it's actually been through those lows that I've learned the most about myself. And so when we talk about authenticity, what's quite interesting is that for me, from my experience, the discovery of who I am, who I show up as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, as a leader, is actually evolving over time. And I'm on this sort of long journey of self-discovery. And I guess one of my tips is to not rush that. I think there've been times in my life when I've wanted to achieve this, and this, and perhaps I've missed some of the beauty on the side of the road as I've gone along. And so I guess I would end there, Ebru. I think, self-care, self-compassion, and self-reflection, and really take your time and enjoy the ride.
Well, this was a lovely chat, Amanda. I mean, thank you for all these, inspirations. I wish all our participants a great International Women's Day week, and I hope you all cherish every day as an International Women's Day and wish our women to recognize their potential and power every day, each day. So over to you, Loren.
Thanks very much, Ebru, and thanks for sharing your journey, Amanda. I think what I found particularly interesting is the career journey that took you to so many different regions that are no doubt represented by members of the audience on this call, given the diversity in the Middle East, but also I think members of our audience whom I hope are men. And the point you raised about the role that men can play in changing that culture, I think is especially vital and is a great segue to our next session, which looks at the practical and actionable steps that we can all take to create a culture of equality at the workplace, moderated by HBR Arabia's Solveig Nicklos, with perspectives from members whom Solveig will be introducing now. So over to you, Solveig.
Thank you very much, and hello, everyone. It's really my pleasure to be here today, and it's, of course, a day very close to my heart, and I'm really thrilled that it is such impressive organizations are taking International Women's Day so seriously. My name is Solveig Nicklos. I'm an executive board member with HBR Arabia, and I'm pleased to be your moderator today with such a distinguished panel. Nora Al-Bakr, Acting VP of Strategy and Excellence at Saudi Payments, Reem Al-Ghanim, Head of HR and Support Services for Chemicals at Saudi Aramco, and of course, Leacy, Global Inclusion and Diversity Lead at Accenture, whom we just met. I want to start by asking our panelists to introduce themselves. So maybe Nora, if I could throw this over to you.
Thank you very much. This is Nora Al-Bakr. First of all, happy Women's Day to all women. This is something we should celebrate every day, as mentioned before. So it's not one day in the year. So grateful to be a woman, a working woman. I'm Nora Al-Bakr. I have been working in the banking industry for my whole career. I shifted my career to manage currently the strategy and excellency, where we look after in Saudi Payment that looks after the payment infrastructure in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And Reem?
Assalamu alaikum, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. And thank you to both Accenture and HBR Arabia for the invitation to be part of this panel during International Women's Day week. And what a fabulous celebration. And Amanda, thank you for the lovely fireside chat, and Ebru for the fabulous moderation. My name is Reem Al-Ghanim, and I am the head of HR and support services and chemicals business at Saudi Aramco, based in Dhahran. I have about 20 plus, not as much as Samantha, but about 22 years plus, working in HR, learning, and in the last few years, working in the core business of downstream and upstream as well. I'm honored to be here with you all today.
Thank you very much. And if we can, I think we just alluded a moment ago, we were going to get into a little bit of the challenges we face, but I'd like to start off by asking each of you to share a story or an anecdote that describes a challenge you've had, a hard time that you've overcome, and what you learned for it. So Reem, let me start with you.
Thank you. I guess every challenge has an opportunity, and what a huge opportunity that challenge that I'd like to kind of recall with you today. About, I want to say 15 years ago, Saudi Aramco went on a journey to really expand the number of women entering the pipeline. And what better than the college degree program for non-employees, or the sponsorship program for students, where we pick up the best and brightest high school students to study abroad. And what what was fabulous was 15 years ago, we decided that we need to sponsor women in this program. For 30, 40 years, we were sponsoring young men. And it was a huge cultural shift at the time. And many families were just not ready for that change just yet. And even though we had 57, 58 young ladies in the program already, in our college prep program, these young ladies came and told me, Miss Reem, we're not going to go. And I'm like, wait a minute. The company invested a lot of my time, a lot of money into making sure this program succeeds, and we have you all accepted in top universities around the world. What do you mean you're not going? And after better understanding, a lot of questioning, we figured out that their families were just not were prepared to let them go. And so what we did at the time, I went and visited about, I want to say 45 different universities in the UK and US, took pictures of where these girls were going to sleep, eat, walk, talk, everything, where they were going to spend their time when they go and study. We've invited all of the mothers, and because guess what? The mothers are the decision makers in the house. We invited the mothers and we said, come, we're going to explain to you what's going to happen in this program. And sure enough, after we showed them everything, after we explained everything to them, one mother stood up and said, I'm convinced I will let my daughter go and study. And then the next one, and then the next one. And what we learned in the process, as much as that could have been catastrophic, and I say this because, alhamdulillah, it's been 15 years. We've had hundreds and hundreds of women, young women, ambitious women, graduate with degrees in chemical engineering, petroleum engineering, geology, geophysics. Had we not asked the right questions, brought the right people, managed our stakeholders at the time, we wouldn't have been able to celebrate the success of these fabulous women. And I'm so very proud of them. That was a challenging time, but one that I'm also very, very happy about as well.
And that is one that is very inspiring and certainly shows alignment, in particular stakeholder management and culture. But we'll dive maybe more into those points in a moment. Let me throw the question over to you, Nora. How have you approached this?
How to approach? Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. The question to you: what challenges or hard time have you had or overcome?
Okay. So this is a long time ago. I think things are getting better. The opportunities are much better today. But I remember I was assigned my first department, to build my first department. I was so excited, and I was looking for the best people in the market, and I was in the banking industry. And I already consulted the HR. We found the best people. The HR contacted them, and they reached out to one guy who was one of the best guys that fits for the job that I was looking for. And he accepted. He had a good conversation with HR. They did the interview. Everything went fine. And then they said, we're going to schedule an interview with the department head. So they didn't say it's a female or male. It was a department head. And immediately I saw the guy. He was shocked when he saw me. And he rejected the job. And he said to the HR, I'm interested in joining your organization, but I cannot be reporting to a woman. And back then, that was super shocking, because I thought I'm giving an equal opportunity. So I'm giving a man and a woman an equal opportunity. I think the important thing that I catch from that maybe that interview, that it opened my eyes that this this way of looking into things and sometimes not accepting a woman to be your manager back then, long time ago, was something that could happen. And it's all about what is your next step. So I started to look for others. I did a couple of interviews. That was not the first guy who rejected an offer because I was a woman. I got used to that. I think, and eventually I learned something that you need to build a reputation, because after a couple of years of that incident, I get people telling HR that we're joining because she's going to be my manager. So those were male in the same society, but because they get to know you, they get to know that you have the knowledge, they get to know your management style, and they get to know that you actually could be a good manager. And the stereotype of women being a bad manager or I cannot be reporting to a woman is no longer there. We are in better times. This is all from the past, but it's a funny story that it makes me smile every time I look to my team.
It is a very interesting story and an excellent example of how times change and culture evolves. And so I guess, Amanda, let me end with you on this particular question. What challenges have you faced?
Yeah, so if you sort of wind the clock forward from where I left you, and we went to live in Hong Kong, actually. And we had a son, and everything was going really well. We had grown all of these technology centers, as I mentioned before, and I'd spent a lot of time in Eastern Europe, Philippines, all over the world. And these little startup centers really felt like an extension of my own family. But of course, a company like Accenture never stays still. And around that 2013, 2014, we had a really big restructure. And the business leader that I was working for was not happy about the outcome, and he resigned. And within a couple of weeks, the entire leadership resigned. And so what I saw, I went from feeling really at the center of something really exciting and big. As I said, I think we were over 110,000 people across these 40 centers. And I felt really at the center of that. I was on the leadership team, to feeling really isolated and anxious. And particularly as a family living out in Hong Kong, I didn't even feel connected to London, my hometown. And that was a really big lesson for me on the importance of always building your network and being really purposeful and intentional on your network. Because you can recover from that. I recovered from that. I took a role that I didn't really want, but a role that was able, I had the right skills for and the experience, and I could do a good job to recreate that reputation that Nora's talking about. But it was hard, and it was a really good lesson for me. And so I pass that on so nobody else needs to feel that pain. But being really intentional about your career and your network and your set of sponsors, I think can be very, very important.
Thank you all very much. I think actually the word you just used, intentional, could be applied to the stakeholder management, the culture alignment, the building the network and the reputation. All of the pieces that you just mentioned are critical in that women, everyone, but women in particular, focus on them as intentional acts in their career development. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit with all of us and talk about digital or technology. I mean, I loved it. A year ago, we would have been having a conversation about technological changes and the impact of the fourth industrial revolution. COVID accelerated us in the last year. I have a lovely data point I like to use. There was an estimate that it would take 453 days to implement remote work, virtual collaboration. After COVID, it was done in 10. So a 43 times increase in application. But I want to talk a little bit about digital skills and how they can play a role in accelerating workplace equality, especially with COVID-19 and the year that we've had. So let me, Nora, jump to you and start with that subject and how you see it having an impact for women.
Let me start with I think with one thing in the current at the current stage of our life, or at the current age, that digital skills is a necessity. It's no longer something that we brag about as an organization. So you need to have those skills either as an organization or as an individual to survive today's world. Now, I know it might not be the answer that everyone expects, but I perceive COVID as a positively, because I think from a policy perspective, like working from home, it was not perceived previously as an option or a preferred option. With COVID, we have seen a lot of policies developed in many countries. And if I would link it to women in the workforce, I see a lot of women struggling after having their first baby or their second baby. So she feels like the balance between her feelings or emotions toward her newly born baby, and for her to be at office delivering her job, the balance was so hard. With the new policies and the work from home and the experiment that we went all I'm talking about our country over, we found out that this is actually something that works. And I think it's a positive thing. We're going to see more people working from home now. We're going to see more women closer to their kids. And I think we're going to see more women in the workforce due to the enablement that we get during Corona. So I see it from the positive side on the women at the workplace.
Wonderful. And actually, Reem, if I could ask you, same question. What sort of impact do you see digitization and technology having?
Well, so if you look at the future of work, I mean, innovation is key to that. And technology is key to innovation. So we can't expect to move to the future without technology. And I'm just reflecting at the W20 communique that came out last year. One item was that one of the key measures for economic growth is increasing the access to technology for women and girls, and especially in remote and rural areas. And so it makes it even more important that we focus on that for women, especially now, because post-COVID, yes, a lot of policies, we took a lot of action, things were changed, as Nora was saying. At the same time, there's been a disproportionate impact on women in terms of their professional and also their personal lives, with sometimes they are having to take care of their kids with online schooling, or and being at home makes it that much more difficult as well. And from the emotional and mental health as well, and well-being, the isolation and everything else affects women tremendously, has affected women and men tremendously. From a professional point of view, some women have found that they've been out of touch because they're not seen if in the office as much as colleagues that have the opportunity to still work from the office. So it has had different results, really, especially for women, the pandemic. And but I think as much as the pandemic we've been able to handle many things with this last year. It has been very difficult on many, and I just hope that we can all be safe and continue to learn, develop, focus on ourselves, as Amanda was saying in the fireside chat. really, and I look forward to hearing Amanda's point of view on this as well.
Well, and I'm sorry to say, let me jump in here, and I thank you both for that answer. And I know there are pieces of that we could go on about for days. This whole subject could be something we could discuss for days, but unfortunately from the panel section, we have to start wrapping up. So Amanda, I'm actually going to shift the question to you quickly and just ask you to give the last word on how organizations can become more women friendly and attract more women to the workplace as the last piece from the panel before the Q&A.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I would draw parallels from both what Nora and Reem said. I do feel optimistic that the opportunities to work more flexibly will actually allow us to accelerate gender equality. However, I've also seen what you mentioned, Reem, which is many women becoming more invisible. And actually, I would say that for other underrepresented groups, such as people with disabilities and also minority ethnic groups as well. And so I guess it comes back to the point we were talking about around being intentional and making sure that there's a balance. And one of the things that all organizations can do to create more balance in the workplace is having both men and women working flexibly and taking parental leave. And with men taking more of their share of the unpaid work at home, dare I put that on the table. But, I think anything where we can have more men role modeling that. And, we've seen some success in certain markets like Australia, like the UK, certain other countries as well, where putting in place paid parental leave and flexibility for men has actually helped us to raise that and make that more of an option for everyone. And certainly in any of our research that we've done, what we've seen is the more equal the culture feels in an organization, the better it is for both men and women. So a lot to be optimistic about there.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you all. I've enjoyed this discussion, and I know we're going to continue on with you with a little Q&A, but let me hand it back to Loren as we shift to the Q&A portion.
Yes, big thanks to our panel, I think whom we can all safely say are champions and pioneers of change. What particularly struck me from all of your perspectives is those hidden agents of change that perhaps we don't often speak about. Reem, you spoke about the role of families in influencing progress. Amanda, you spoke about your network, your leaders, your sponsors, and of course, men in helping drive change. And Nora, what particularly struck me about your piece was talking about having to work all that more harder to build that reputation and change mindset. So thanks very much for sharing those deeply personal stories. Over to the Q&A, which will be led by my colleague Theo, who I am very happy to say is one of our biggest advocates of equality in the team. Perhaps not least because he's one of the minority male team members in the Middle East marketing team. So over to you, Theo, for the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Loren. And yes, indeed, minority, but I'm very happy to be working with females all around. So thank you, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank those of you who have submitted questions to our panelists. We received some great questions, and the first one is for you, Reem. And the question says, you've had long-term experience in what has traditionally been a male-dominated industry. How do you see women evolving in such industries, and where do you see them go next?
That's a great question. So yeah, I remember the days when I was first hired. I'd be the only woman in the room, and in many cases, until today, there are certain areas where are very, very few women. And how I've seen that evolve, though, is with the message from the top. Really, our president and CEO, Mr. Amin al-Nasser, spoke yesterday about his commitment and the commitment he's making in developing the pipeline further, in reaching our diversity targets and being very intentional in reaching those targets as well. So building that pipeline, we've been able to see and working with government as well, we've been able to have women working on the rig sites, have women working in what was previously seen as male-only jobs. And we have women firefighters, we have women working in security. And just a few years ago, that was unheard of, something that couldn't be considered. And I'm very happy to see that the company is dedicated to that. Diversity and inclusion has been since the 15 years ago at least a great something that I focused on tremendously, when the message from the top, from our CEO, from our senior management. And not just the message, but the actions that they're doing, how they're enabling women to be placed in different roles. Managing director of our Singapore office is a woman. We have many, many examples of women in the company that are role modeling this for the younger generation. The women in the drill sites are speaking to young girls in the schools and showing them what their work is like. And that's how you build the pipeline, the interest and the motivation to be a drilling engineer, to be a chemical engineer in the future.
Thank you, Reem. That's indeed very, very insightful. Our next question is, many women find it challenging to take the first steps as they strive towards leadership. How, in your opinion, could women start this discussion in their own workplace? Nora, would you like to take on this question?
Thank you for the question. It's an interesting question. So I think if there is a word of advice that I would advise any woman who's starting her career, or any woman who's in the mid of her career but she didn't take this step, you have nothing to prove. So being a woman is just enough. Sometimes we get things also in our heads where we believe we are not. We're disabled from doing certain things. Just do the things that you like. Empower yourself. Surround yourself with a supporting system. So every woman have her own supporting system. The supporting system could be male, female, and find the people who are an advocate in your organization to influence certain decisions, no matter on which level you are. Either you're an entry level or you're very senior, you still could influence a lot of decisions by finding the right people, by channeling this confidence, channeling how women could be could lead certain activities in the organization. So you don't need to be enabled. You could enable yourself by just believing in yourself and being yourself. Don't wait for this to come from others.
Thank you, Nora. That's great. And our final question today is, what tools or resources are available for people to learn how to bring a culture of equality to the workplace? Amanda, would you like to take on this question?
Yeah, and I think what I love about working in this area is that I think as companies, we want to share, we want to learn from each other, we want to partner. And that's fantastic, because I think we all want to change the world, right? So I would say don't go it alone. You're not alone. Reach out to other people in other companies. There's a lot of NGOs. There's a lot, obviously, that you can find, a lot of organizations aimed at building equality that have a lot of toolkits, but also people who are doing roles like inclusion and diversity in other companies who will help you. And so absolutely, you don't need to go it alone. And in fact, the more we partner together, the bigger the impact we'll have.
Thank you, Amanda. This was indeed very inspiring. And now I'd like to hand over back to Loren for her closing remarks. Loren?
Thank you, Theo, and thank you to our wonderful panel for sharing some fantastic tips, ideas, personal experiences and their career journey. I think just in conclusion, what we just heard there was not only a recap of the resources available to you that perhaps you hadn't considered or perhaps you'd overlooked, but also the importance of self-care, self-empowerment, what you can do that starts with yourself. And I would say that from what we've heard today, there very much is a hybrid approach to what we can do for ourselves, but also in reaching out to help each other. And this takes a village, as someone said earlier. So I thank everyone for joining us for this special session. I believe this could have continued for another hour as we dived into some of those topics a bit more. But I would say that please do keep an eye on Accenture Global social media. We have a wealth of fascinating conversations just like this lined up throughout this week and next. So there is more in store. But thank you in the meantime for joining us this evening.